Skyrim is a land that constantly puts itself on display. Cities rise out of the landscape, ruins tower over the horizon. Even its secrets often feel like they want to be found. But not every place is like this. Some locations don't just hide from the player, they feel hidden from the world itself. Tucked away in mountain ridges no one climbs, buried beneath ruins that no one visits, or quietly existing in places where realistically no one should even know they're there. These aren't just hard to find locations. They're places that feel forgotten, cut off from trade, from travel, from history itself. Places that don't show up in conversation, don't appear in quests, and don't seem to belong to anyone at all. And that's what makes them so interesting. Because when a place is hidden from the world, not just the player, it stops feeling like part of Skyrim's story and starts feeling like something that was never meant to be found at all. Reachwind Eyrie is one of the few places in Skyrim that feels truly hidden, not just because of where it is, but because of how completely disconnected it is from everything around it. As if it exists outside the awareness of the world itself. Located high in the mountains southeast of Markarth, reaching it is less about following a path and more about deliberately going out of your way to find something that the game never really asks you to look for. The Reach is already a region defined by harsh terrain and vertical design, with cliffs and winding paths that make exploration feel uneven and often incomplete. But Reachwind sits above even that, tucked away in a position that feels intentionally removed. There are no nearby settlements guiding you toward it, no meaningful foot traffic, and no sense that anyone in Skyrim even acknowledges its existence. And when you finally arrive, what you're met with isn't exactly activity or danger, but stillness. A quiet, elevated Dwemer structure standing alone against the sky, with no inhabitants, no defences, and no clear purpose remaining. That absence is what defines it, because unlike most Dwemer locations in Skyrim, which are dense, mechanical, and filled with automatons or Falmer, Reachwind feels stripped down to almost nothing. It lacks the usual complexity associated with these ruins. There are no sprawling underground corridors, no functioning systems, no sense that it's still operated in any capacity. It's just the structure itself, a platform, a tower, a fragment of something that once had meaning, now left behind with no context to support it. And that creates a very different kind of presence. Most Dwemer ruins feel like remnants of a lost civilization that you can still interact with, places where the past is still active in some form. Reachwind doesn't have that quality. It feels inert, complete in its stillness, as if whatever role it once played has been entirely erased, leaving behind only the physical shape of its existence. The fact that it's positioned so high above the surrounding landscape only reinforces that feeling. From the top, you can see across the Reach, the jagged terrain stretching out in every direction, distant landmarks barely visible through the haze. It gives the impression that this place was meant to observe rather than participate, to exist above the world rather than within it. And yet there's no indication of what it was observing, or why it needed to be here at all. That lack of explanation is what makes it feel truly hidden and isolated. Not in the sense that it's difficult to find, but in the sense that it's been removed from the narrative entirely. The game doesn't reference it, no quests lead you there, no characters mention it to my knowledge. It doesn't tie into the broader story of the Dwemer in any meaningful way. It's just there. And because of that, it starts to feel less like a designed location and more like a leftover piece of the world. Something that exists without needing to justify itself. That kind of design is rare in Skyrim, where most locations serve a clear purpose, whether it's for gameplay, storytelling, or exploration. Reachwind resists that structure. It doesn't reward you in any significant way for finding it. It doesn't challenge you. It doesn't even try to hold your attention for very long. You arrive, you take in the view, You recognize the isolation of the space, and then there's nothing else to do. And that nothing is exactly what makes it memorable, because it creates a moment where the player is forced to confront the idea that not every place in Skyrim exists for them. Some places exist independently, without quests, without rewards, without any acknowledgement at all. And that independence makes Reachwind feel like it's hidden in a deeper sense. Not just physically, but conceptually. It's hidden from the systems that define the rest of the game. Hidden from the flow of progression, from the structure of quests, from the idea that everything should lead somewhere or mean something. It simply exists high above the world, untouched and unbothered. There's also something distinctly Dwemer about that kind of detachment. The Dwemer are known for their mystery, for their sudden disappearance, and their advanced, often incomprehensible technology. But most of their ruins still feel grounded in function. You can see what they built, how it might have worked, what purpose it might have served. Reachwind doesn't offer that clarity. It feels more abstract, more like a fragment of an idea than a fully realised structure. And because of that, it leans into the more unknowable aspects of Dwemer design. It becomes less about understanding and more about presence. Deepwood Redoubt is one of those locations in Skyrim that doesn't immediately present itself as hidden. But the deeper you go, the more it becomes clear that what you've found isn't just a location off the beaten path. It's something deliberately tucked away from the rest of the world. On the surface, it appears to be just another Forsworn-controlled ruin in the Reach, positioned west of Solitude, surrounded by the region's familiar cliffs and winding paths. You can see parts of it from a distance, stone structures rising out of the landscape in a way that feels consistent with other locations in the area. But that initial visibility is misleading, because Deepwood Redoubt isn't defined by what you can see. It's defined by what it leads to. Once you push past the outer layers, past the expected resistance and into the interior spaces, the location begins to shift. It stops feeling like a simple camp or ruin and starts to feel like a passage, something guiding you further away from Skyrim's surface and into a space that feels almost completely removed from it. This transition is what makes it so effective. Many locations in Skyrim are self-contained. You enter, you clear them, and you leave. Deepwood Redoubt doesn't work like that. It pulls you inward, gradually separating you from the open world until you emerge somewhere entirely different, Deepwood Vale. And that's where the real sense of hiddenness begins. Deepwood Vale doesn't feel like it belongs to the same world you were just in. It's enclosed, quiet, and strangely untouched, surrounded by towering cliffs that cut it off from the rest of the map. There are no roads leading to it, no natural paths that would suggest easy access. The only real way in is through Deepwood Redoubt itself, which immediately reframes the entire experience. What seemed like a standard location becomes a kind of gate, a controlled entry point into something far more isolated. And because of that, the Vale feels less like a place you discovered and more like a place you weren't meant to reach at all. The Forsworn presence here adds another layer to that feeling. Unlike more scattered camps, this space feels intentional, almost curated. It's not just a group of outcasts surviving in the wilderness. It feels like a chosen location, somewhere specifically selected because of how hidden and defensible it is. The surrounding cliffs act as natural walls. Their limited access points make it easy to control, and the overall layout gives the impression of a place that exists outside the influence of Skyrim's border conflicts. While the Forsworn are typically portrayed as aggressive and chaotic, here they feel more settled, more rooted. Like they've found a space where they can exist without interference. And that changes how the location is perceived. It's not just hidden geographically, it's hidden socially and politically as well. It's a place where a group has effectively removed itself from the rest of the province, carving out a pocket of isolation that operates on its own terms. The environment itself reinforces this separation. Deepwood Vale is visually distinct, with a calmer, almost serene atmosphere that contrasts with the harshness of the surrounding reach. There's water, greenery, and a sense of stillness that feels out of place, given how close it is to the more active regions. It doesn't feel abandoned, but it doesn't feel connected either. It exists in kind of an in-between state, where life is present but contained, cut off from the outside world by both geography and design. And that containment is what makes it feel truly hidden, not because it's invisible, but because it's inaccessible in any natural sense. You don't just wander into Deepwood Vale, you have to be led there, intentionally or not, through a structure that acts as both barrier and a gateway. This layered design is what sets Deepwood Redoubt apart from other hidden locations. It's not just a place you find, it's a place you pass through, and in doing so, it changes your relationship with the space around you. By the time you reach the Vale, Skyrim feels distant, almost irrelevant. The usual markers of the world, roads, cities, quests, fade away, replaced by something quieter, more self-contained. And that shift creates a kind of disorientation, a sense that you've stepped outside the normal boundaries of the game. It's subtle but effective, because it doesn't rely on spectacle or scale. It relies on contrast, on the idea that a place can feel hidden not because it's small or hard to see, but because it's separated in a way that most locations aren't. Deepwood Redoubt and the Vale it conceals represents a different kind of secrecy, one built on layers, on progression, on the gradual realization that what you've found isn't just another point on the map, but a space that exists parallel to it. Craig's Lane Cavern is a location that, on the surface, feels almost impossible to classify as hidden. And yet, the more time you spend thinking about it, the more it starts to feel like one of the most deliberate concealed places in Skyrim. Not because of where it is, but because of what it's trying to be. Located just a short distance from Shaw's Stone, a settlement that itself feels overlooked and peripheral, this cavern sits in a region that players can pass through multiple times without ever feeling compelled to stop. There are no dramatic landmarks that pull your attention toward it, no major quest lines that push you in its direction early on, and nothing about its exterior that suggests it holds anything particularly unusual. It looks like another cave, another minor point on the map, the kind of place Skyrim is filled with. And that's exactly what makes it so effective, because what's hidden here isn't the location itself, it's the nature of what's inside. When you enter Craig's Lane Cavern, the expectation is familiar: bandits, animals, and maybe a small dungeon to clear, but that expectation is immediately disrupted. Instead of chaos or decay, you find structure, organization, a space that feels lived in, not just occupied. The cavern is being used as an underground fighting pit, a place where gamblers and spectators gather to watch organized brawls, where money changes hands and violence is turned into entertainment. And that shift in tone is what reframes the entire location. This isn't a hideout in the traditional sense. It's a hidden operation, a self-contained system that exists just outside of the sight of Skyrim's surface, functioning in a way that feels almost civilized despite its brutality. The people here aren't just surviving, they're participating in something. There's a sense of routine, of purpose, of roles being filled. Fighters, organizers, onlookers. It's a small ecosystem, quietly operating beneath the world above. And that's what makes it feel hidden in a deeper sense. Because the cavern isn't isolated due to geography alone. It's isolated by design. It's meant to be unseen. The fact it's so close to Shaw's Stone only reinforces that idea. This isn't a remote mountain peak or a distant ruin. It's right there, near a functioning settlement, and yet completely still disconnected from it. The people in Shaw's Stone don't reference it. There's no indication that this kind of activity is happening just beyond their reach. It exists in parallel, close enough to be convenient, but far enough to remain unnoticed. And that proximity creates an interesting tension, because it suggests that Skyrim isn't just hiding ancient ruins or forgotten structures. It's hiding active, ongoing systems that the player can easily miss. That kind of hiddenness feels more intentional, more human. It's not the result of time or decay, it's the result of choice. Someone built this, someone maintains it, someone benefits from it continuing to exist without interference. The cavern itself supports this idea through its layout. It's not sprawling or complex, but it's purposeful. The central fighting area is clearly defined, with space for spectators and movement that feels controlled, rather than chaotic. There's a sense that this place has been shaped to serve a specific function, even if that function is never fully explained. You're not given a deep backstory or a larger narrative context. Instead, you're left to piece together what's happening based on what you see. And what you see is enough to understand that this isn't a random occurrence. It's something established, something ongoing. But because it's self-contained, it never expands beyond the cavern itself. It doesn't connect to larger factions or major storylines. It doesn't influence the world outside. It remains small, quiet, and contained. And that containment is what keeps it hidden. Not just from the player, but from the world. Craig's Lane Cavern also highlights a different kind of hidden space compared to the places like Blackreach or Deepwood Vale. Those locations feel removed because of their scale or geography. Craig Lane feels hidden because of its subtlety. It doesn't overwhelm you with size or spectacle. It blends in, disguising itself as something ordinary until you look closer. And even then, it doesn't fully reveal itself. There's no grand explanation, no deeper layer waiting to be uncovered. It simply exists as it is, a quiet pocket of activity that operates independently of everything else. Blackreach might be one of the most paradoxical locations in all of Skyrim, because despite being one of the largest and most visually striking areas in the entire game, it still manages to feel deeply hidden, not just in terms of access, but in how completely it is removed from the surface world. Unlike most locations that are tucked behind mountains or concealed by geography, Blackreach is hidden vertically, buried far beneath Skyrim itself, existing as a vast subterranean expanse that most players will never fully explore unless they are deliberately pushed towards it. And even then, the game never presents it as something you can simply stumble upon. You don't just find Blackreach by wandering. You have to descend into it, piece by piece, through Dwemer ruins that act less like entrances and more like barriers, each one reinforcing the idea that what lies below is not meant to be easily reached. By the time you arrive after navigating mechanical corridors, Falmer-infested tunnels, and the remnants of a long-dead civilization, the transition feels complete. You're no longer in Skyrim, at least not in any recognisable sense. What makes Blackreach so effective as an isolated place isn't just its scale, but its disconnection. It doesn't feel like an extension of the world above. It feels like a separate layer entirely, operating under its own rules, its own atmosphere, and its own sense of time. The glowing mushrooms, the artificial lighting, the massive caverns stretching endlessly in every direction. It all creates the impression of a world that has existed in isolation for so long that it no longer relates to the surface at all. And that separation is what defines its hidden nature. Because Blackreach isn't hidden in a way that invites discovery. It's hidden in a way that suggests it was never meant to be a part of the player's journey in the first place. It exists beneath everything, unseen, and largely unaffected by the events unfolding above. The Civil War doesn't reach here. The holds don't govern it. Even the sky, one of Skyrim's most defining features, is replaced by an artificial ceiling that mimics something distant and unreachable. And yet, despite that isolation, Blackreach is not empty. It's filled with life, but a kind of life that feels alien compared to the rest of the game. Falmer moved through the ruins, blind and adapted to the darkness, while Dwemer automatons continue their silent routines, remnant of a system that no longer has purpose. Giant glowing flora replaces forests, and the ambient sound design creates a constant sense of unease, as if the entire space is alive in a way that doesn't fully reveal itself. This combination of activity and isolation creates a unique tension. Blackreach feels inhabited, but not in a way that welcomes you. It feels like you've entered something self-sustaining, something that doesn't need the surface world and doesn't acknowledge it. And that's what makes it feel so deeply tucked away, not just physically, but conceptually as well. It's a place that exists outside of Skyrim's awareness, even though it lies directly beneath it. The Dwemer architecture scattered throughout only deepens that feeling. Massive structures, elevators, and ruins stretch across the cavern, hinting at a time where this place was not just inhabited, but thriving. But unlike the ruins on the surface, which are often fragmented and partially reclaimed by nature, Blackreach's structures feel more intact, more preserved, as if time has moved differently here. And yet there's still no clear understanding of what it all was. The purpose of Blackreach remains vague, its full scale and function never fully explained. It's a reminder that the Dwemer, one of Skyrim's most mysterious civilizations, built things that even the game itself doesn't fully contextualize. And that lack of explanation reinforces that idea that Blackreach isn't just hidden from the player, it's hidden from understanding. Even when you're standing in it exploring its depths, you never feel like you fully grasp what it is or why it exists. And that uncertainty becomes part of its identity. The way you access Blackreach also plays a significant role in how it's perceived. There's no single obvious entrance. Instead, it's connected to multiple Dwemer ruins across Skyrim, each one offering a different path downward. This fragmented access makes it feel less like a destination and more like a network, something spread beneath the world rather than confined to a single point. It's not just hidden in one place, it's hidden everywhere, just out of reach, waiting beneath locations you might have already explored without realizing what lies below. And that idea transforms the way you think about Skyrim's geography. Skyrim is a world that constantly invites exploration. But what these places reveal is that not everything is meant to be seen. Some locations hide behind mountains, others lie buried beneath cities, and some exist so far outside the natural flow of the world that they might as well not exist at all. From the depths of Blackreach to the quiet isolation of Reachwind, from the concealed passage of Deepwood Vale to the overlooked systems beneath Riften. These places aren't just hidden because they're hard to find. They're hidden because nothing points you towards them. They exist without asking to be discovered. And that's what makes them different. Because in a game filled with quests, markers, and direction, these locations remind you that there are still parts of Skyrim that don't revolve around you as the player. Places that carry on untouched whether you find them or not. And maybe that's the most interesting part. Not that they're hidden, but that the world never needed you to see them in the first place. Most cults in Skyrim scream their presence. The Dark Brotherhood carves assassinations into the walls of Skyrim's history. The Vigilance of Stendarr broadcast their mission from every shrine and every ruin. The Daedric princes appear in dreams, in haunted artifacts, and in the mouths of madmen. But then there's the Mythic Dawn, a name once feared across the Empire, a group whose leader slit a god's throat and opened the gates of oblivion. Their history is burned into the towers. Their symbol, rising sun, black and red, is still known to the scholars of Tamriel. And yet, in Skyrim, they feel forgotten, half alive. An echo of something that once mattered. But even more so now, they're just a whisper in a cave. And the most unnerving part is, they're still waiting. To understand how strange their presence is in Skyrim, you have to remember what they did. The Mythic Dawn wasn't just a cult. They were responsible for the assassination of Uriel Septim VII, the Oblivion Crisis, and the literal destruction of cities. Their Daedric lord walked the mortal world, and yet they were still defeated. Their leader, Mankar, was killed, the gates were sealed, their future vanished. So when Skyrim introduced them again, through books, ruins, and one especially eerie quest, you expect something bigger, more coordinated and more dangerous. But what you find is quieter, smaller. A couple of worshippers in a cave, huddled around a fire, cling to prophecy. It's not ambition anymore, it's desperation. You meet Silas in Dawnstar. He runs a museum, or rather, he wants to. It's called the Mythic Dawn Museum, and it's not well loved. Guards warn you off, citizens avoid him. He's not dangerous, but he's just off. Inside, he shows you relics, robes, books, a Daedric dagger. He's collected everything he could from the ashes of a forgotten cult. He speaks with reverence, but also with something close to loneliness. He's not surrounded by followers, he's surrounded by silence. He's the only one at the museum. At a museum no one visits. Worships for a god who never gave him a voice. This isn't the start of a revolution, it's a man building a shrine to memory. The quest Silas gives you is called Pieces of the Past. Your goal? Recover the 3 parts of Mehrunes' razor, a legendary Daedric weapon shattered after the crisis. This sounds like the beginning of something grand, but each piece you retrieve reveals something unexpected. The first is in the hands of a man who wants nothing to do with the cult. The second belongs to a paranoid noble who doesn't understand what he's holding. The third is guarded by a Hagraven cult who see it as just another tool of power. No one reveres the razor anymore. No one remembers why it mattered. Each step you take confirms the same thing. The Mythic Dawn didn't fade into shadows. They crumbled into irrelevance. Once you gather the pieces, Silas asks you to meet at the shrine, a stone altar hidden in the Mountain of the Pale. This shrine is one of the loneliest places in the game. Wind lashes at you, snow mutes every footstep. There are no pilgrims, no sign of recent life, just frozen stone and a cold promise. And when you arrive, Dagon speaks. For the first time in centuries, the Prince of Destruction addresses a mortal. He asks you to kill Silas, to prove your worth, and to earn the razor's full power. You can choose, but either way, the moment is telling. Dagon doesn't care about the Mythic Dawn anymore. He doesn't thank Silas, he doesn't restore the cult. He only wants blood, and once he gets it, the mountain is silent again. If you choose to spare Silas, the shrine remains lifeless. Dagon falls silent, the razor stays broken. If you kill him, the shrine activates. Demora guardians emerge, you fight, you win, you claim the blade. But there's no fanfare, no new followers, no secret rooms or quests or lore. You're left alone on the mountaintop, razor in hand, a Daedric weapon with no cult behind it. Just a dagger, just a name, and just an echo of fire in a frozen land. The Mythic Dawn does exist elsewhere in Skyrim, but only barely. In books, in journals, in footnotes. You can find the commentaries, you can read his apocalyptic rhetoric, his promises of paradise through destruction, but it doesn't inspire you. It doesn't threaten, it reads like a scripture from a forgotten god. Even the vigilance of Stendarr, who monitor Daedric cults, barely mention the Mythic Dawn. Because in a world of vampires, dragons, and cannibals, the Mythic Dawn just don't really matter anymore. Again, there are no Mythic Dawn agents in cities, no new cells forming in caves, no secret notes pointing to a grand design. Compare that to the Dark Brotherhood, who rebuild from ruins. Even minor cults, like the Afflicted, have dungeons, purpose, and identity. But the Mythic Dawn, well, they're not growing, they're not hiding, they're just fading. Even in the Elder Scrolls Online, which takes place before Skyrim, they're presented as broken, desperate zealots clinging to an ideal that even Dagon seems to have abandoned. And that's what makes them so haunting. Not because they're evil, but because they're forgotten evil. The kind that doesn't end with a bang, but just a slow, pitful ember. So why are they here at all? Why resurrect a cult only to show its decay? Maybe that's the point. The Mythic Dawn isn't here to terrify you. They're here to remind you that some ideologies don't die in fire. They die in failure, in fading purpose, in cold shrines and unvisited museums. Their presence in Skyrim isn't a threat, it's a ghost. And in a game so obsessed with legacy, with prophecy, and with power, the Mythic Dawn might just be the best warning of all, that not every story can get a second chapter. There's something quietly unsettling about how often the Mythic Dawn symbol still shows up in Skyrim, however. You'll find it burned into old banners, engraved in books, worn on amulets that have no magical use, no stats, and just presence. You can't interact with it, can't use it, it's just there. The rising sun over a bloody horizon, a mark of the Fourth Era's most infamous cult, still visible 2 centuries after its fall, almost like a scar that can't even heal. What's disturbing isn't that it remains, it's that no one talks about it. NPCs don't recognise it, guards don't react. Even Silas, who surrounds himself with the remnants of the cult, never truly explains what the symbol means. It's one of the only visual motives in Skyrim that has such a deep history, but zero in-game explanation, no codex, no glossary entry, no loading screen tips. It's just a glyph tied to apocalypse, left hanging in caves and museums as if it's no different than a moth wing or a Dwemer gear. And that silence, well, it's deafening, because it reminds you that some horrors don't end in fire, they fade. They become decoration, forgotten relics of people who once thought they could reshape the world with daggers and dreams, but ultimately couldn't. And now it's just reduced to symbols that just sit there watching and watching over and over again. The razor is one of the strongest weapons in Skyrim. It has a chance to kill instantly, no matter the target. It's powerful, but it's not symbolic anymore. There's no ritual attached to its use, no reputation. It's just a weapon you got from a dead man's obsession. And that's the perfect metaphor for the Mythic Dawn in Skyrim. A cult that once shook the world, reduced to a side quest with an optional reward. No purpose, no legacy, just a name, just a relic, and just a whisper in the snow. Skyrim is full of groups trying to be remembered. The Stormcloaks fight for history, the Thieves Guild fight for relevance, the College of Winterhold fights for prestige, but the Mythic Dawn, they're not fighting anymore. They're waiting for Dagon to speak again, for Cameron's paradise to return, for the world to burn, but the world just moved on. And maybe that's the saddest thing of all. Not that they failed, not that they were evil, but that they waited, and no one was watching at all. In a world as cruel and unpredictable as Skyrim, luck can mean everything. It determines who survives a dragon's attack, who escapes a collapsing cave, who finds gold in a chest instead of a dragon's curse. Yet for one man, luck was both his name and his undoing. His name was Lucky Lorenz, a seemingly ordinary Nord whose story ends not in glorious battle or heroic sacrifice, but beneath the crushing weight of a fallen tree. He was not a warrior, nor a mage, nor a thief. He was just a man, and his death, frozen forever in one small cabin by the river, has become one of Skyrim's strangest and most quietly tragic tales. Lucky Lorenz embodies the dark humour and quiet melancholy that run beneath Skyrim's vast landscape. His story, though only hinted at through environmental clues, reveals more about the nature of fate, irony, and human fragility than some of the game's longest quests. In the shadow of his ruined home, we are reminded that in Skyrim, as in life, luck is not protection, it's temptation. Lucky Lorenz's cabin lies just south of Iverstead, nestled beside the river that winds its way toward Lake Gear. At first glance, it looks like any other homestead, a simple log structure with a small dock, a few crates, and the faint remnants of a peaceful life. But as you approach it, it becomes clear that something terrible has happened here. The roof has collapsed, the chimney shattered, and most strikingly, A massive fallen tree has smashed through the cabin, crushing its owner beneath. Lorenz's body still lies there, twisted awkwardly and splintered with wood and debris. There is not really a lot of blood, no signs of struggle, no bandit attack, just the quiet, terrible stillness of an accident. Next to his body lies his journal, and within its pages we find the hint of a man who may have been running from something, or perhaps towards something. The irony of his name, Lucky Lorenz, strikes you immediately. It's as though fate itself mocked him, allowing him to believe in fortune right up until it crushed him beneath a tree. Lorenz's journal is short, but rich with subtext. It tells us he was not a farmer or a hunter, but a scavenger, a man who found a ring and a small fortune of coins and supplies. His words carry optimism, perhaps even pride, as though luck had finally favoured him. His life of hardship, wandering, and risk seemed to have paid off. He had a home, a river, and a bit of wealth. His final entry speaks of his intent to settle down, to live quietly and enjoy his newfound luck. And then, as if to prove that Skyrim is no place for dreamers, the tree fell. The player never learns exactly how it happened. Was it a storm, a dragon's passing shadow, a careless strike of his own axe? The ambiguity only deepens the tragedy. Lucky Lorenz's optimism becomes his curse. He named himself after fortune, and fortune punished his arrogance. Few locations in Skyrim tell such a complete story without dialogue or quests. Lucky Lorenz's cabin is a masterclass in environmental storytelling. Every detail, from the angle of the fallen tree to the scattered furniture, tells you something about his final moments. His bed is crushed, his belongings, a handful of books, a few bottles, and his lucky ring remain untouched. His small boat still rests peacefully by the dock, implying that he had been living here comfortably, unaware of the danger looming just above him. The tree's placement feels almost deliberate, as if nature itself conspired against him. It's not a battlefield, it's not a bandit raid, it's an accident. The cruelest, most mundane kind of death in a land obsessed with destiny and glory. The tragedy of Lucky Lorenz stands out precisely because it is so ordinary. While heroes fight dragons and kings wage wars, he simply dies, forgotten, unlucky, and utterly human. Before settling near Iverstead, Lorenz was likely a wanderer. His journal and possessions suggest a man who made his living scavenging, exploring, and surviving off what he found. Perhaps he once delved into caves for treasures, fought off bandits, or sold goods in small villages. The gold and ring he mentions could have come from any number of Skyrim's countless ruins. But more importantly, it suggests a dreamer. Someone who believed that fortune could be earned through persistence, not birthright. And for a moment, it worked. He had carved out a life for himself away from the chaos of cities and wars. His little cabin was a place of peace, a rare comfort in a world of constant struggle. But Skyrim doesn't reward peace, it devours it. The same wilderness that gave Lorenz a home eventually claimed his life. His story becomes a metaphor for the futility of trying to find safety in a land that rejects it. The Elder Scrolls universe is filled with irony, but Lucky Lorenz's fate might be the purest example of it. His name, his optimism, his newfound wealth, all of it leads to a death that feels both absurd and inevitable. It's the kind of dark humour that defines Skyrim's world, a place where the dragons can burn cities to the ground, but one unlucky man is killed by a tree. Players often chuckle when they find him. After all, it's easy to see the humour in a man named Lucky, crushed by fate itself. But beneath that humour lies a deeper commentary on Skyrim's relationship with destiny. So much of the game's world revolves around control. The Dragonborn's control over shouts, over dragons, over fate. Yet Lucky Lorenz reminds us that not everyone in Skyrim gets to be a hero. Most are at the mercy of forces they can't see or understand. His death is funny because it's meaningless, and that meaninglessness is terrifying. The fallen tree that killed Lorenz represents something powerful, the indifference of nature. In Skyrim, nature is both beautiful and cruel. The mountains inspire awe, but they also hide frostbite and death. Rivers provide life, but they also sweep travellers away. Wolves, bears, and saber cats roam freely, indifferent to the wars of men. Lorenz's death wasn't an act of malice or destiny. It was nature doing what it does. Trees fall, storms rage, life ends. This brutal honesty is part of Skyrim's charm. Unlike the grand destinies of heroes, the world's small tragedies remind us that not everything happens for a reason. Lucky Lorenz didn't die to teach a lesson or fulfill a prophecy. He just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And perhaps that's the most human fate of all. It's strange how often Skyrim's darkest moments are wrapped in humour. The name Lucky Lorenz alone feels like a cruel joke written by the gods, or by Bethesda's developers who seem to delight in blending tragedy with irony. But this dark humour gives the world depth. It mirrors the absurdity of real life, where bad luck strikes the good and undeserving. The juxtaposition between Lorenz's name and fate becomes more than a punchline. It's a meditation on the way Skyrim's world treats its inhabitants. The Dragonborn may defy death and reshape the world, but the common people, the Lorenzes, the Anises, the Nafi of Ivarstead, live and die in obscurity. Lucky Lorenz is a reminder that humour and sorrow often coexist. His story makes players laugh at first, then think later. And that emotional duality is what makes Skyrim's storytelling so enduring. There is a loneliness to Lucky Lorenz's death that sets it apart. No one mourns him, no one speaks his name, his body remains unburied, visited only by curious travellers who happen upon his cabin. The journal and Lucky Ring are the only testaments to his existence. This loneliness reflects a theme that runs through Skyrim's wilderness, the forgotten dead. From the skeletons in mountain caves to the ghosts in the barrows, the land is littered with stories like his. Yet Lorenz's tale stands out because of its normalcy. He wasn't a soldier who fell in battle or a mage consumed by his own magic. He was just a man who wanted a home. His death is the purest expression of how Skyrim forgets its people. Amid dragons and Daedra, there is no space for the unlucky and unimportant. Lucky Lorenz never sought glory. He wasn't part of prophecy, a rebellion, or a guild. Yet his story lingers in players' minds precisely because it resists meaning. He is the most unlucky NPC in all of Skyrim, not because he was evil or foolish, but because he was human. His death captures the strange beauty of Skyrim's world, a place where fate can crush you without warning, and where even the smallest stories can echo louder than the shouts of dragons. In a land obsessed with destiny, Lucky Lorenz reminds us of the cruel randomness of life, and the quiet dignity of those who never got the chance to be heroes. Skyrim is a province of loud locations. Black Reach glows beneath the earth. Sovereign Guard burns in golden myth. The throat of the world scrapes the sky. But some places whisper. This place is one of those. Tucked quietly in the mountains southeast of Helgen, this cave rarely appears in discussions about Skyrim's most mysterious or most dangerous locations. It isn't tied to a Daedric prince, it isn't part of the main quest. It doesn't contain a legendary artifact that players obsess over. And yet, it might be one of the strangest, most overlooked locations in the entire province. Because South Fringe Sanctum is not just a cave, it's a borderland refuge, a political statement, a forgotten experiment in coexistence. And almost nobody goes there. To understand why South Fringe Sanctum is so unexplored, you have to look at where it sits. It's near Helgen, a location players rush through in the opening hours of the game. But after Helgen burns and the tutorial ends, most players never return to that stretch of wilderness unless a quest demands it. And South Fringe Sanctum never demands anything. There is no radiant bounty sending you there early on, no major faction quest that points you towards it, and no NPC in Riverwood whispers rumours about it. It exists quietly, almost defiantly off the beaten path. Skyrim trains players to follow markers, rumours, and dramatic events. South Fringe Sanctum offers none of those hooks. You only find it if you deliberately explore the mountain ridges and cold edges near the southern border, which means most players never see it at all. And that's exactly what makes it fascinating. When you finally enter this cave, you expect bandits, or Falmer, or vampires. Instead, you find something far stranger. The cave is occupied primarily by hostile mages, conjurers, alchemists, and refugees from the College of Winterhold. These are not typical enemy necromancers chanting in ritual circles. They are mages who have withdrawn from society. Some were expelled from the college, some left voluntarily, some simply don't belong anywhere else. South Fringe Sanctum is not a lair. It's a refuge, more like. Inside, you find makeshift living quarters, alchemy tables, and quiet signs of domestic life. There is an air of seclusion rather than aggression. The inhabitants are defensive, yes, but not inherently malicious. It feels less like a dungeon and more like a hidden community. And that subtle difference makes the cave feel alive in a way most Skyrim locations never attempt. Geographically, South Fringe Sanctum sits near the southern border of Skyrim, close to Cyrodiil. And that matters. Skyrim's civil war rages across the province. The Thalmor hunt Talos worshippers. The College of Winterhold is mistrusted by nearly every hold. Magic itself is viewed with suspicion. Now imagine being a mage during this time. Where do you go? Not to Whiterun, they distrust magic. Not to Windhelm, they distrust outsiders. Not to Markarth, they distrust everyone. So you go south. You go to the mountains. You go somewhere no one will look. South Fringe becomes symbolic of something larger. The quiet exile of knowledge. It's a physical manifestation of how Skyrim pushes its intellectuals and mages to the margins. The province is loud about warriors and gods, but it is suspicious of scholars. And so the scholars disappear into caves. What makes South Fringe Sanctum even stranger is its proximity to Helgen. Helgen is where everything begins. It's the birthplace of the Dragonborn's story. The execution block, Alduin's return, the moment the world changes forever. Players remember Helgen vividly. The burning towers, the collapsing walls, the dragon overhead. And yet, just a short distance into the southern mountains, sits this cave, untouched by spectacle, untouched by destiny. That's the paradox. You start your journey in this region, you escape through its forests, you follow Hadvar or Ralof through its caves, you look back at Helgen's smoking ruins, and then you leave. You never think to climb higher, you never think to search the ridges, you never suspect that just beyond the path of your escape lies a hidden enclave of displaced mages. It's almost poetic. The most dramatic opening in Skyrim happens within the sight of one of its most overlooked sanctuaries. Helgen burns loudly, South Fringe waits quietly. One announces itself with fire and prophecy, the other hides in silence. And somehow, we remember only the flames. Unlike necromancer dens filled with corpses and ritual blood, South Fringe feels subdued. Yes, there are summoned creatures and magical defences. Yes, the inhabitants will attack if provoked. But there's no grand ritual, no Daedric shrine, no apocalyptic experiment unfolding. Instead, it feels like research. The cave contains alchemical ingredients, spell tomes, and study areas. It suggests that these mages are continuing their craft in isolation, refining magic away from political interference. It almost feels peaceful, which makes it deeply unusual. Skyrim rarely portrays magic outside of extremes, either heroic or monstrous. South Fringe Sanctum presents something in between. It's not evil, it's not good, it's simply removed. And that quiet neutrality may be why players overlook it. It doesn't shock, it doesn't terrify, it just exists. South Fringe Sanctum has no major questline attached to it. It only has 1 or 2 artifacts that draws you in, but the most prominent feature of South Fringe is the mage that is trapped within, and her name is Sloveni. It's optional in the purest sense. You don't need to go there to free her. But that optionality reveals something important about Skyrim's design philosophy. Bethesda built a world where not every place revolves around the player. Some places exist independently. The Sanctum does not care whether you discover it. Its inhabitants were surviving before you arrived and would continue to survive if you never came. That gives it an eerie authenticity. In a game where dragons wait for your arrival and Daedric princes single you out as chosen champion, South Fringe Sanctum feels refreshingly indifferent. It doesn't need you, and that makes it feel real. The College of Winterhold presents itself as a bastion of magical study in Skyrim, but it is also exclusive, political, and heavily scrutinised. Some mages are expelled, others leave in frustration. The college's leadership walks a careful line to avoid angering the Jarls. South Fringe Sanctum represents what happens to mages who fall through those cracks. It's not a rebellion against the college, it's what's left over. And that's quietly tragic. These aren't villains plotting conquest. They are displaced scholars trying to continue their work. Somewhere the world won't judge them. In that sense, the cave feels more human than most magical locations in the game. It shows us what magic looks like when stripped of glory. Skyrim is filled with grand ruins and dramatic dungeons, but its most interesting stories are often the ones that don't demand your attention. South Fringe Sanctum doesn't scream, it doesn't glow, it doesn't threaten the world. It simply exists, carved into stone, filled with displaced scholars, sitting quietly at the edge of a province too busy fighting itself to notice. And perhaps that's why it's the most unexplored place in all of Skyrim. Because in a world obsessed with dragons and destiny, the quietest stories are the easiest to miss. But they are often the most revealing. Skyrim is a land that constantly tries to grab your attention. Dragons circle overhead, cities tower over the tundra, ancient ruins promise treasure and danger beneath every mountain. But sometimes the most interesting places in Skyrim are the ones that don't truly stand out. They blend into the landscape, they look ordinary, they quietly wait for someone curious enough to notice. One of the best examples of this is Pine Watch. At first glance, Pine Watch is nothing more than a small shack, sitting peacefully in the forests of the Falkreath Hold. It looks like dozens of other cabins scattered across Skyrim's wilderness, a place where a lone hunter might live quietly, far away from the chaos of the cities. Most players ride past it without a second thought, but beneath that unremarkable little house lies one of Skyrim's most surprising secrets, a hidden criminal operation, an underground hideout, and a quiet connection to the powerful Thieves' Guild of Riften. Pine Watch may look forgettable, but that is exactly the point. Pine Watch sits just west of Helgen and north of the road that winds to Falkreath. The surrounding forest is dense and quiet, filled with towering pines and the distant sounds of wildlife. In other words, it's the perfect place for a secluded home. When you first arrive, the shack seems completely normal. The cabin contains the typical items you might expect: a bed, a table, a cooking pot, and a few scattered belongings. Nothing about it screams danger. Nothing suggests hidden tunnels or criminal conspiracies. And that is exactly why Pine Watch works so well. Because Skyrim is full of shacks like this. Hunter cabins, abandoned houses, small farms. They are everywhere. Players become accustomed to them and stop questioning what might be hidden inside. Pine Watch relies on that assumption. It disguises itself as something mundane in a world where players have learned to ignore the mundane itself. The true nature of Pine Watch reveals itself only if the player begins to explore more carefully. Hidden within the shack is a concealed passage leading underground. Behind the innocent-looking cabin lies Pine Watch Bandit's sanctuary, a sprawling hideout filled with criminals, traps, and stolen goods. Suddenly, the quiet cabin transforms itself into something much more sinister. What looked like a peaceful home is actually the entrance to an entire underground operation. Bandits move through the tunnels below, guarding treasure and maintaining a secret base far away from the eyes of Skyrim's authorities. It's a clever twist. Many Skyrim dungeons begin with dramatic ruins or imposing caves. Pine Watch begins with a humble wooden door and a small chimney puffing smoke into the forest air. It doesn't look like an entrance to anything important, which is exactly why no one suspects it. The importance of Pine Watch becomes clearer during the Thieves Guild questline, particularly the quest Silver Lining. During this mission, the player is sent to recover a valuable silver mold from Pine Watch, revealing that the hideout is connected to criminal networks operating across Skyrim. This small shack in the forest is not just a random bandit camp. It is part of a much larger system. The Thieves Guild, despite being headquartered in Riften far to the east, maintains influence throughout the province. Pine Watch acts as one of their quiet outposts, a place where stolen goods can be hidden, guarded, and moved without attracting attention. In other words, Pine Watch is a piece of Skyrim's underground economy. And yet, if you never join the Thieves Guild, you might never learn that at all. At the centre of Pine Watch's operation is Regal Strongarm, the woman who lives in the shack above. At first, she seems harmless, just another NPC occupying a remote cabin. But if you venture deeper into the sanctuary below, her true identity becomes clear. Regal is the leader of the bandits operating beneath Pine Watch. The peaceful resident upstairs is actually the mastermind of the entire hideout. This dual identity adds an extra layer of intrigue to the location. Regal's role perfectly reflects Pine Watch itself, an ordinary surface hiding something much darker below. She lives above ground, maintaining the illusion of a simple life, while commanding a network of criminals beneath the forest floor. It's a quiet deception, one that mirrors the subtle storytelling Bethesda often hides within Skyrim's world. What makes Pine Watch particularly impressive is the scale of what lies beneath it. The underground sanctuary is far larger than the small shack above suggests. It contains multiple chambers, living areas, and defensive positions filled with bandits guarding their territory. Traps line the corridors, enemies patrol the halls, loot is scattered throughout the rooms. It feels like a full dungeon, one that players would normally expect to find beneath an ancient ruin or a massive cave entrance. Instead, it's hidden under a single wooden cabin. That contrast is what makes this place so memorable for the players who actually discover it. The realization that something so large could exist beneath something so small creates a sense of wonder, and perhaps a little paranoia about what else might be hidden across Skyrim. Pine Watch's location in the Falkreath Hold is also significant. Falkreath is known for its forests, its graveyard, and its quiet atmosphere. Compared to cities like Markarth or Windhelm, it feels calm and remote. But that calm hides many secrets. Bandit camps dot the surrounding woods. Necromancers experiment in hidden caves. Dark Brotherhood assassins once operated nearby. Pine Watch fits perfectly into this landscape of hidden danger. It reflects the idea that Falkreath's forests are not as peaceful as they seem. Beneath the trees and mist lie criminals, conspiracies, and forgotten stories waiting to be uncovered. The shack at Pine Watch is simply one more secret buried in the woods. Despite its hidden complexity, Pine Watch remains one of the most unnoticed locations in Skyrim. There are several reasons for this. First, it lacks visual spectacle. There are no towering ruins or dramatic landmarks drawing players towards it. Second, it sits in a forested area that players often pass through quickly while travelling between cities. Thirdly, its entrance looks identical to dozens of other cabins scattered across the province. Players become conditioned to expect nothing special from these small buildings. After exploring a few hunter cabins and finding nothing interesting, they stop checking. Pine Watch takes advantage of that habit. It hides its secrets in plain sight. One of Skyrim's greatest strengths is its use of environmental storytelling, the ability to tell stories through locations rather than dialogue. Pine Watch is a perfect example of this. The shack above tells one story, a quiet life in the woods. The sanctuary below tells another, a network of bandits living and working together in secret. By combining these two layers, the game creates a subtle narrative without needing long conversations or expositions. Players who only glance at the shack see nothing unusual. Players who explore deeper uncover an entire hidden world. This layered design rewards curiosity, a key theme throughout Skyrim's exploration. Skyrim is often remembered for its grand moments, dragon battles, ancient prophecies, and epic quests. But the world's true magic lies in its quiet discoveries. A forgotten campsite, a hidden cave, or a simple wooden shack in the forest that turns out to be something far more dangerous than it appears. Pine Watch reminds us that exploration is not just about chasing markers on a map. It's about curiosity. It's about stepping inside the unremarkable cabin and wondering what might be hidden behind the walls. Because sometimes the most unnoticeable place in all of Skyrim is hiding the biggest secret of all. And Pine Watch has been keeping its secret for a very long time.